What do Falcons do? Rise up. Welcome to Rise Up Reactions, the show where we talk all things Falcons, NFL, Georgia sports, and in general the sports news of the day. I'm your host, Dr. Lee Denning, lifelong sports fan, and today, guys, I'm coming back to you with another video talking about my predictions for the NFC North this time. I've already talked about the Falcons and the NFC South. I may do a little bit more detailed video because I'm going a little bit more in depth on some of these, but I do think the Falcons win our division. I did the NFC East last time. Feel free to go back. I'll link that up above or about now, so we'll see how that ends up panning out. But today I want to talk about the NFC North, which I think is an incredibly fascinating division. You had the Minnesota Vikings, who had a great season last year, but a really weird one, where they had a winning season, won 13 games, and had a negative point differential when it was all said and done. Ridiculous statistic overall for a team. That tells me that they just got lucky in a lot of spots and that they won a lot of one-score games. I think last year, the games that a year prior they had been losing, those one-score games, I think they won like 8 or 9 of those this past year, and that just was a bit of luck. A few things went their way. An incredible comeback against the Indianapolis Colts to give Matt Ryan the worst loss of all time, or the worst comeback loss of all time. But today I want to start off, we'll go with the Vikings, the Bears, the Lions, and the Packers. So it's a really interesting division, and I don't think anybody's going to come away as a Super Bowl contender, but there is going to be a playoff team coming out of this. So let's start right with the reigning NFC North champs, the Vikings. So real quick, everybody in this division is going to play the entire AFC West, the entire NFC South, and they're going to get everybody in their division twice. So right out the gate, I'm not going to talk any more about that. I think none of them are going to sweep the AFC West. Some of them could sweep the NFC South, and I think they're all going to probably be 4-2 or 5-1 or something like that. They all have the potential to do that within their division, but somebody's obviously going to be on the receiving end of the losses there, so there are some teams that could go 1-5 or 2-4 within the division. So we're not going to really talk a whole lot about those games anymore, but I will talk about games that they've drawn from their other cross-divisional opponents and the cross-conference opponents. So right out the gate, the Vikings, by winning last year, you have gained yourself another game with the Eagles, the 49ers, and the frickin' Bengals. That sucks. I don't see you winning any of those games just right out the gate unless the 49ers for some reason are having bad quarterback play. I just really don't see you winning any of those games. But again, we already talked about they had a very lucky 2022. They've had some changes. They've lost Adam Thielen to the Carolina Panthers, but they have replaced him with Jordan Addison in the draft, who is a very highly touted prospect from USC. Their wide receiver room is still really frickin' good, with Justin Jefferson being possibly the best wide receiver in the entire National Football League right now. And you still have Kirk Cousins, who is not a terrible quarterback. He's just not what I would put as a top 10 quarterback. He's not somebody that I think I would list that highly. With that said, he is still one of the better quarterbacks in the entire NFC, and that does give them a chance to possibly go deep here. But because of the quality of a lot of their opponents that other guys don't have to deal with, I think that's going to be really tough. They also did just cut Dalvin Cook. I think it's an appropriate move from a money standpoint. I really hate this for running backs, though. My opinion is that they really need to look at the next NFLPA to change how running backs specifically have their contracts affected right out of the draft. If it were up to me, I would say all running backs coming out of the draft get a 2 or 3 year contract, with then the 5th year option being actually a 4th year option for your first rounders, so that they have a chance to get paid. And again, I know it's not going to sound fair to a lot of other positions, but the running backs are some of the highest impact players on teams. They are the biggest fantasy producers. They are some of the biggest jersey sellers, and they get paid a pittance of what everybody else does over the course of their career, because they have a lot of wear and tear, and they run out of gas and run out of steam in their late 20s as opposed to their early 30s, like a lot of other positions in the NFL. So it's something that I think needs to be addressed, because these are guys that are faces of franchises, faces of the NFL, and they are not getting the money that they are due for their services in comparison to everybody else. Now, I think all of them are fairly overpaid, but again, for the market, they're not getting paid what they bring in terms of value to the NFL. So that's just my thought on that. But yeah, so your floor for the Vikings. Looking at your schedule, guys, I'm so sorry. You have a really hard schedule. I think your floor could be as low as 6-11, maybe 5-12. I'm gonna say 6-11. Your ceiling, again, you have tough games. If you find ways to win like you did last year, I think 12-5 is the ceiling. I just don't see you winning as many games as you did last year. And then I think 9-8 is a respectable season for your respectable prediction. I still think you're gonna have a winning season. I don't know that 9-8 is going to be enough to make playoffs this year. I think only one NFC North team is going to make it to the postseason this year. I just think there are going to be some other teams, particularly from the NFC East and the NFC West, that are going to potentially eat up those extra wild card spots. But that's my thoughts on them. So 9-8, that's going to be good enough to probably put them at second or third in the division. We'll move on to the Bears. Now, the Bears had the most money to spend in the offseason with about $95 to $100 million in free agent spending, and spend they did. They brought in a lot of free agents, a lot of solid contracts, but they also made the biggest move in the draft after having the number 1 overall pick, trading back to the Carolina Panthers, getting basically 2 first-round picks. I would argue 3 when you account for DJ Moore, who is worth a first-round pick on his own. So they got 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and DJ Moore to round out a pretty solid now receiving room. Now you have a guy in Darnell Mooney who was being your wide receiver 1 before, now can fit more comfortably into that wide receiver 2 model where he should be. Chase Claypool, who has been a solid wide receiver 2-3 as a model in Pittsburgh. I don't like that you traded your second round pick for him, because this year that would have been the 32nd overall pick, essentially another first rounder, and that pick turned into Joey Porter for the Pittsburgh Steelers, which we'll talk about in their video. I don't like that you gave that up, but again, the deal is done. You didn't know you were going to have the number 1 overall pick, but you did know you were going to be pretty bad this year. You knew you were going to be picking in the top 40 with that pick, and I think that was a poor decision overall. But again, can't cry over spilt milk. Now you have 3 pretty solid wide receivers. This is it for Justin Fields. Do well this season or get shipped out. They're going to be looking quarterback going forward if you are not the answer. I still think the guy has a lot of talent. He has not had solid coaching around him, and I think this is going to be a major change for him. The other thing that I am a little concerned about, they don't have David Montgomery anymore. I don't know why you didn't bring him back. I think they're going to be running with, I think it's Deonta Foreman right out the gate this year. I forget exactly who they're going to be running with. But again, they did fix some of their offensive line problems with getting who was it? Darnell Wright from Tennessee. I think I would have gone with Peter Skoronski out of Northwestern just because of where he was ranked in terms of availability. I think Darnell Wright was about the 4th or 5th best tackle in the first round of this draft. I think Broderick Jones would have been better. I think Paris Johnson Jr. would have been better. He wasn't available to you. I just don't know that Darnell Wright was the guy here. But again, I'm not a professional NFL scout, so maybe they saw something or they liked the locker room aspect of it. Maybe there are things about him that I just don't know about. But he did play pretty solid at Tennessee for the last few years. So with that, I still think your floor is potentially bad because you do draw the Commies, you draw the Browns, and you draw the Cardinals. Those are all winnable games, except maybe the Browns if Deshaun Watson returns to form. Plus, you still have to go through Nick Chubb, and I think Kareem Hunt is still on their team as of the making of this video. But you have a tough draw with the Browns, you have a fairly neutral draw with the Commies, and you have an easy draw with the Cardinals. And again, you still play all those other teams. I think your floor, you're going to be better than last year. Your floor is 5-12. You could still be one of the top 5 worst teams in the league, but I don't think you're going to end up finishing there. Your ceiling is 11-6. If enough things go your way, you could end up going 11-6. And 11-6, depending on how all the dominoes fall, would be enough to win this division the way that I have it going out. I don't think you're going to win a lot more than that. Maybe 12-5 if you just say, hey, we're going to win games against the Chargers, the Broncos, the Raiders, and then sweep the NFC South. And go 1-1 or better in the division all the way around. There are ways to make it where you could go 12-5. I just don't think you're going to have that big of a turnaround. It's going to take a little bit more. You're a couple of years away from being a solid contender in your division. But again, you have made appropriate steps, and you should be excited about where you're going to go. Plus, you're going to be getting a new stadium in Arlington Heights sometime in the near future, so you're going to be moving out of Soldier Field, which, from my understanding, has a fairly interesting history overall. But without further ado, I think you're going to finish 7-10, and let's move on to the Lions. The Lions, this is their division to lose. They get all the same opponents as everybody else, but they also draw the Seattle Seahawks, the Ravens, and the Cowboys because they finished second in the division last year, and those teams also finished second in their respective divisions last year as well. So, with that in mind, I think they are the best overall team in the division. They still have a very tough schedule. Not as tough as the Vikings, but it is a tough schedule. You open up with the frickin' Chiefs on Thursday Night Football, and that is going to be a tone setter for the rest of the year. You did lose Jamal Williams, who was your goal line running back last year, and you do replace him with Jamar Gibbs, who you took way too early, in my opinion, in the first round, but he does have potential to be a solid piece for you. He's probably the second best running back in the entire draft after Bijan Robinson, so it's still a solid pick. I just think you could have gotten him in the second round. That's just my opinion, but again, I don't like taking running backs in the first round for any reason, so I'm really not happy that the Falcons did it either with Bijan Robinson. But again, he's going to be a solid player. We'll talk about that. It's going to get me a lot of hate among Falcons fans, or at least certain divisions of Falcons fans. But coming back, again, you get the Seattle Seahawks, the Ravens, and the Cowboys. None of those are easy games, but they are all winnable games for you. You did have the offseason gambling issue, so you're going to be without Jameson Williams for at least 6 games, and then we'll see after that. So it's a tough start. You still have Amon-Ra St. Brown and Marvin Jones Jr., who are going to be catching balls for you. You're still running hot with, who's their quarterback? Oh, Jared Goff. So you still have Jared Goff, and if I remember, the Lions took a quarterback at some point in this draft. I just don't remember who they took off the top of my head. I gotta look real quick. Hendon Hooker. There we go. Hendon Hooker out of Tennessee, a guy who tore his ACL and probably would have been a first or second round pick had he not done that. He's going to get healthy at some point in the early part of the NFL season, and you don't know. He could end up being a solid heir apparent to your current quarterback situation. But again, I don't know how good he is going to be. He was lighting things up for Tennessee when he was playing for him. He just had that unfortunate injury at the end of the year, but certainly a solid pickup in the third round for you. But with that, I think your floor, you still have a tough schedule. So 7-10 is the floor if everything goes bad for you. If you have a lot of injuries, if you're not able to overcome the offseason issues, 7-10 is the floor, but your ceiling is 13-4. If you find ways to win, if you play that gritty, tough football where you're biting the kneecaps off of people, you can go 13-4. I think 10-7 is respectable. 10-7, 11-6 is a respectable prediction for you. 10-7, I have you winning the division. So with that, we'll move on to finally the most interesting team in the entire division outside of what I think it's the Lions, being the Green Bay Packers. Tom Grossi's team, a guy that I'm going to go see live here in just a couple of days, come to Atlanta June 14th. Be on his Twitter to look for any of his updates. He's going to be on the Pat McAfee show today, which I'm super excited. He's raising money for St. Jude's charity for children, for research for cancer. I don't have the link to that, but feel free to go to any of Tom Grossi's videos. Feel free to donate. He is really trying to raise a ton of money for that organization. He's over $131,000 as of the making of this video, and hopefully he gets closer to $1 million by the time it's all done. I don't think he's going to hit that, just the trajectory of it, but hopefully he gets very close. We'll see if Pat McAfee donates anything to him today, which could be a very real possibility. But moving on to the Packers, it's Jordan Love time. This is your first time in 30 years that you have not had a instant Hall of Fame quarterback, or a guy who we know is going to be a first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback playing for you. Regardless of how you feel about Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, they have both been amazing quarterbacks and were staples of their generation for the last 30 plus years of NFL football. So you don't have that anymore. You have Jordan Love, who's been sitting on the bench for a few years. The question is going to be chemistry. Is he going to have chemistry with Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs? Are you going to be able to stay healthy this year? Because health was a big issue for your offensive line last year and your defense. You know, are you going to run the ball with Aaron Jones, who's one of the top at least top 7 running backs in the NFL, maybe top 5. I think you can make an argument for him there. Are you going to run the ball with him? So I don't know. They draw the Rams, the Steelers, and the Giants as their other opponents that nobody else is going to be drawing. They still have the same tough schedule that everybody else does with the AFC West and the division times 2. They do get the NFC South, which I don't know what version of the South is going to show up this year. I don't know if we're all going to be pushovers or if we're actually going to be really competitive. But none of those games are going to be particularly easy for the Packers. So I have your floor. Tom, don't shoot the messenger. I have your floor at 6-11. But I also have your ceiling. If Jordan Love takes the steps that y'all are hoping he can take, and he steps in and it's like nothing ever left with, Pro Bowl version of Aaron Rodgers, y'all could be 13-4. You could beat the Rams, the Steelers, and the Giants. You could sweep the South. You could run the table in your division, and you could steal at least 2 or 3 games out of the AFC West. It would not shock me tremendously to see them be the winner in this division. It would just be a matter of if Jordan Love is a guy or not. But with that in mind, I have the AFC North finishing as follows. I have it being the Lions, followed by the Vikings, the Packers, and the Bears, all within a game of each other. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Please consider liking, sharing, subscribing. I'm really trying to hit 500 subscribers by the end of the 2023 season. If I blow past that, wonderful. If not, hey, I'm still going to keep doing this. But thank you guys for watching, and as always, rise up.